I want you to close your eyes for a second. Well, don't close them if you're driving, but imagine a scenario.
Okay.
It's Saturday morning. You are standing in your kitchen. The light is streaming in. It's a beautiful day.
I'm with you.
On the counter to your left, there is a freshly glazed, warm donut. It's one of the good ones. You can smell the yeast, the sugar, that slight hint of vanilla. It promises immediate, visceral comfort.
The classic Saturday morning siren song.
Right. But then you look to your right. There's your laptop. It's open to your banking app. And it is staring back at you with the cold, hard reality of that vacation fund you've been trying to build for 6 months. You were trying to save for a trip to Italy.
The dream versus the dopamine.
Exactly. And in that moment, you are frozen. You have a decision to make. Do I eat the donut, which gives me immediate biological pleasure but costs $3 and maybe a little guilt trip? Or do I skip it, save the $3, and contribute that tiny, almost invisible amount to a vacation that won't happen for another 6 months?
It sounds like such a simple choice. But from a biological perspective, what you just described is the apples versus oranges problem, but, infinitely more complex.
How so?
You are asking your brain to compare a biological sensory input sugar, fat, taste, texture, against a completely abstract future social concept savings, travel, future happiness, compound interest.
They seem like two completely different universes.
They are. Physically, they have absolutely nothing in common. They don't share a unit of measurement. I mean, one is measured in calories and dopamine spikes. The other is measured in dollars, days, and these vague emotional predictions.
And yet we make this choice, usually in a split second. I might grab the donut, or I might slam the laptop shut and grab an apple. But the decision happens.
It does. And that split second is what we are deep diving into today. Because for your brain to make that choice, it has to solve what feels like a mathematical impossibility.
Which is what?
It has to convert those two completely different inputs, the sensory donut and the abstract vacation, into a single common language, a common neural currency.
I love that phrase, common neural currency. It sounds like we're talking about the Bitcoin of the brain.
Or maybe the euro, since we're saving for Italy.
Right. So in a way we are. We're talking about how the brain creates a universal value scale.
That's it. If the donut is worth, say, 50 brain points, and the vacation savings is worth 60 brain points, you choose the savings. But today, we aren't just talking about the concept. We are going to tear apart the neural architecture of that valuation.
Okay.
We are going to look at the specific algorithms, the timing down to the millisecond, and the specific networks that allow you to decide between a donut and a dream.
And we have a massive stack of research for this one. I was looking through the files you sent over, and this is some heavy stuff. We were looking at papers ranging from, foundational work in 2009, all the way to brand new, hot-off-the-press studies from 2025.
We're covering the whole timeline. We're going to meet the cast of characters in your head. We've got, let's call them the banker, the cost accountant, and the body's interoceptor.
I like that. The banker, the accountant, and the interoceptor. That sounds like a sci-fi villain.
It does sound like one, but it's actually the part of you that feels your own heartbeat. That's the insula. The banker is the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, or VMPFC, and the accountant is the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC.
Okay, we're going to get very friendly with those acronyms today, but before we get into the weeds, I want to stick with this common currency idea. If I'm looking at that donut and that bank account, my brain is fundamentally converting them into a single number.
That is the core hypothesis. It's called the common currency hypothesis. And to really understand it, we have to start with a paper from back in 2009.
Okay.
It's by Fitzgerald and colleagues, published in the Journal of Neuroscience. The title is The Role of Human Orbitofrontal Cortex in Value Comparison for Incommensurable Objects.
Incommensurable. That's a $10 word.
It's a great word. It means things that cannot be measured by the same standard.
Apples and oranges.
Exactly. Apples and oranges. Or, in the case of this study, they wanted to see if the brain uses different regions to evaluate different types of goods, or if there's one single region that just handles everything.
So did they put people in an MRI scanner and show them donuts and bank statements?
Pretty close. They showed them various items. Some were tangible consumer goods, everyday items you'd buy in a store, and others were just money they wanted to see. Does the brain have a stuff valuation center and a separate money valuation center?
And if they were separate, that would explain why I'm so bad with money, right? My money brain and my stuff brain aren't talking.
Well, if they were separate, you'd be paralyzed. Imagine you have a currency for food and a currency for money, but no exchange rate between them.
You wouldn't be able to choose.
You'd stand in your kitchen oscillating forever because you couldn't say which one was more.
Okay, so what did Fitzgerald find?
He found that the orbitofrontal cortex, the OFC, which is the part of the brain sitting right above your eyeballs, is the key player here.
Right in the front.
Right in the front. It tracked the subjective value of the item regardless of what category it belonged to.
So the OSC is the banker.
The OFC is the banker. Whether you were looking at a snazzy new coffee mug or a pile of cash, the OFC fired in a way that correlated with how much the person wanted it.
So it strips away the identity of the object. It doesn't care that it's a mug or that it's paper.
Exactly. It just leaves the raw value.
So the OFC doesn't care if it's a donut or a stock portfolio. It just sees value. It's converting everything into, let's call them OFC bucks.
OFC bucks is a perfect way to think about it. And without this conversion, decision-making is pretty much impossible. This 2009 paper was foundational because it proved that we don't have a fragmented value system. We have a unified one.
Okay, so we know where the value is stored, or at least calculated. It's in the OFC and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, or VMPFC. I know we're going to use those terms a bit interchangeably today, right?
For the purpose of this discussion, yes. They're neighbors, they overlap, and they function as a unified complex for this kind of valuation work. The VMPFC is a bit larger, the OFC is a specific strip, but together, they are the value engine.
Got it. So the banker sits in the front of the brain. But knowing where isn't enough for me. I want to know how. I mean, how does a squishy biological neuron physically compute value? It's not like there's a little calculator in there.
No, it's not digital. It's probabilistic. And this brings us to a really cool study from 2010 by Phileas Stades and colleagues, published in PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. They proposed a mechanistic account of value computation.
I remember reading this part of the notes and getting a headache. They talk about probabilistic integration. Can we break that down for the people who, like me, failed calculus?
Absolutely. Let's go back to your kitchen. You're looking at the donut. Your eyes, your visual cortex are sending signals up to the banker, the VMPFC.
Right.
But the visual cortex doesn't just send a text message saying, good donut. It sends a stream of noisy data.
Like what kind of data?
It looks brown, it looks shiny, it looks round, it looks warm. But these signals aren't perfect. Maybe the lighting is bad. Maybe you're tired. The data is probabilistic, meaning there's a chance it's a great donut and a chance it's a stale bagel.
So the banker is receiving all this fuzzy information.
Right. And what the study showed is that the VMPFC integrates this evidence over time. Think of it like a scale, not a digital scale, but an old school balance scale with two pans.
Okay, I'm picturing the scales of justice.
On the left pan, you have the donut. On the right pan, you have the vacation. The visual cortex drops a pebble onto the left pan, glazed. The scale tips slightly. Then your memory drops a pebble on the right pan. Italy has good wine. The scale tips back.
So it's a tug of war.
Exactly. Phileas called this a difference-based comparator operation.
Difference-based comparator? That sounds like the name of a monotone robot.
It does, but it describes exactly what the math is doing. The VMPFC is constantly calculating value of option A minus value of option B. It's a running subtraction problem.
So it's not static. It's not donut equals 50. It's donut is currently winning by 5 points, now 2 points, now losing by 10 points.
Yes, it's dynamic. It accumulates. And the moment that difference hits a certain threshold, say the donut is winning by 15 points, boom, the decision is made.
You reach for the donut.
You reach for the donut.
That is fascinating. It implies that a decision isn't a thing that happens. It's a process that builds up until it tips over.
Precisely. And that building up process takes time. We're talking milliseconds, but it's measurable.
But wait, is the VMPFC just one big blob doing this math? Or is it organized? Because I remember seeing a paper in the stack from 2014, Clitheroe and Rangel in Social, Cognitive, and Affective Neuroscience that talked about a gradient, like the layout of the office matters.
Oh, the layout matters immensely.
Yeah.
Clitheroe and Rangel did a massive meta-analysis. They looked at tons of fMRI studies to see if different parts of the VMPFC handle different things.
And what did they find?
They found a posterior to anterior gradient.
Okay, translation time. Posterior means back, anterior means front.
Right. Think of the VMPFC like a long hallway going from the deep center of your brain out toward your forehead.
Okay, walking down the hallway.
At the back of the hallway, the posterior end, they found that the brain processes concrete rewards. Things like food, sex, immediate visceral pleasures, the I want it now stuff.
So the primitive stuff is in the back. The lizard brain rewards.
Roughly speaking, yes.
Right.
It's closer to the limbic system, closer to the ancient parts of the brain. But as you walk forward down that hallway toward your forehead, the anterior end, the rewards being processed, become more and more abstract.
Abstract like money.
Money, social goals, the concept of saving for a vacation, the idea of health.
That makes so much sense evolutionarily. The front of the brain is the newest part, right? The prefrontal cortex is what makes us human.
Exactly. We didn't invent a brand new brain structure to handle 401ks. Evolution just built an addition onto the existing Berry valuation factory.
That's a great way to put it.
We just expanded the system forward. So the posterior VMPFC says berry tasty, and the anterior VMPFC says compound interest good.
It's the same currency, just minted in a slightly different part of the bank.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Okay, so we have the banker, the VMPFC, running this subtraction algorithm with the primitive stuff in the back and the fancy stuff in the front. But here's the question I think everyone asks. This is the angel versus devil problem.
The classic dualism.
Right. We have this popular psychology idea that I have a devil on one shoulder, my impulse for the donut, and an angel on the other. My logical brain saying, no, think of Italy. And usually people identify the angel as the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the DLPFC, the smart executive part of the brain.
That is the standard view. The emotional brain screams donut, and then a second later the logical brain steps in and says halt.
But looking at the timeline in these papers, that's not actually what happens, is it?
It is not. And this is a major misconception that neuroscience has really corrected in the last decade. To understand why, we have to look at a 2012 study by Sokol Hessner in the European Journal of Neuroscience.
What did they look at?
They looked at the timing of these signals specifically to answer who speaks first.
It's a race. The banker versus the executive.
Exactly. Does the VMPFC fire and then the DLPFC checks it, or do they fire together? And the answer is surprising. They found that value computation in the VMPFC is immediate. The moment you see the donut, the valuation starts.
The banker is quick on the draw.
Very quick. However, the DLPFC activity, that logical control center, also correlates with the value, but it lags behind.
It lags, so the logic is late to the party.
It's late. The valuation happens almost instantly in the emotional, or let's say, value centers. The control or integration regions come online slightly later.
So if I grab the donut before my DLPFC wakes up, I'm doomed.
In a sense, this explains impulsivity. If the decision happens too fast, the logic simply hasn't had time to file its report.
Huh.
But there's a deeper point here. It's not just about speed. It's about the structure. A 2009 paper by Rangel in Science, one of the most prestigious journals in the world, pretty much debunked the dual system myth entirely.
Wait, so there isn't an angel and a devil fighting?
No. That implies two people with their hands on the steering wheel fighting for control. Rangel's work suggests there is a single steering wheel, the VMPFC.
The banker is the only one driving.
The banker is the final funnel. The DLPFC, the logic doesn't fight the VMPFC. It modulates it.
Modulates. Explain that.
Okay, imagine the VMPFC is the CEO making the decision. The DLPFC is a consultant. The consultant walks into the meeting and says, hey, here's a report on Italy. The CEO, who is the VMPFC, takes that report and integrates it into the calculation.
So the DLPFC is just feeding data.
Exactly. It feeds information into the VMPFC. If the consultant is persuasive enough, if the signal from the DLPFC is strong, the VMPFC changes its calculation and says, oh, Italy is actually very valuable. Okay, I'll subtract points from the donut.
But if the consultant is weak?
We're late. Then the CEO ignores the report and buys the donut.
This changes how I think about willpower. It's not about suppressing an urge. It's not about wrestling the devil to the ground. It's about making the logic input loud enough and fast enough to get integrated into the common currency calculation.
That's it. You aren't fighting yourself. You are trying to get the relevant data to the decision maker in time.
So counting to 10 before you eat something, that actually works. Is that why it works?
It works because you are literally buying milliseconds for the DLPFC to get it signaled down to the VMPFC. You are letting the consultant get into the room before the contract is signed.
That is incredibly practical advice buried in fMRI data. Give the logic board a chance to arrive.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've talked about the reward. We've talked about the banker finding the value. But every decision has a cost. And I don't just mean the $3 for the donut. I mean the neural cost, the effort, the conflict.
Enter the accountant. The anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, and its partner, the insula.
The dynamic duo of difficulty. I want to talk about the insula first, because when I hear insula, I think of disgust. Like, If I smell bad milk, my insula lights up, right?
It does. The insula is the center of interoception. It's about listening to the body. It tells you if you're nauseous, if your heart is racing, if you're in pain.
So what is the body monitor doing in a financial decision?
A lot, actually. A 2018 study by Arul Pragasam in PNAS showed it does something much more sophisticated than just feeling bad. They looked at something called subjective value prediction error.
SVPE. That sounds complicated.
It's not. Think of it as the WTF signal.
The WTF signal. I like that.
So in this study, they used a reversal of fortune setup. Imagine you are a participant. You are squeezing a hand grip, those exercise grippers.
Yeah, the ones that make your forearm burn.
Right. So on the screen, you see a high reward. Squeeze this, get $5. Your brain says, great, easy money. Your VMPFC predicts high value. You are ready to go.
I'm hyped.
But then, a split second later, the screen changes. It shows you the effort required.
Yeah.
And suddenly, the bar is incredibly high. You have to squeeze it with maximum force for 30 seconds.
Ugh, the deal just went sour.
The deal went sour. The reward didn't change. It's still $5.
Mm-hmm.
But the cost just skyrocketed. This is a prediction error. You predicted a good deal, and you got a bad one.
And the insula lights up.
Like a Christmas tree. But here's the nuance. It didn't light up just because of the effort. It lit up because of the violation of expectation. It's the disappointment signal.
So if I expected the task to be hard, my insula might stay quiet.
Exactly. If you walk into the gym expecting to suffer, the insula is chill. But if you walk into a spa and someone hands you a dumbbell, the insula goes crazy. It monitors the conflict between what you wanted and what you're getting.
That explains so much about frustration. It's not the work, it's the surprise of the work.
Correct. The insula and the dorsal ACC, the DACC, form a network that monitors for this conflict. They act as the cost accountant, flagging any unexpected expenses.
Okay, so let's talk about the accountant, the ACC. You said it tracks conflict, but does it also track effort? Like, does it calculate this is 50 units of hard work?
There's a distinction here that is really important, and a 2018 paper by Hogan in cerebral cortex tried to disentangle it. The distinction between physical effort and choice difficulty.
Wait, aren't those the same? If I have to run a marathon, that's high effort and a difficult choice.
Not necessarily. Imagine I offer you a marathon for $10 million versus sitting on the couch for $0.
I'm running the marathon. Where do I sign?
Right. So the physical effort is huge. It's going to hurt. But the choice is easy. It's a no-brainer.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Now, imagine I offer you a donut versus a bagel. You like them both equally. They both cost the same.
That's a nightmare. I'd stand there for 10 minutes.
Exactly. The physical effort is zero. You just have to lift your hand. But the choice difficulty is sky high because the values are tied.
So who handles what?
Hogan found that the VMPFC air banker encodes the subjective negative value of effort. It actually does the subtraction. Reward minus effort. So the banker handles the net profit.
The banker calculates the bottom line.
Right. But the ACC, the accountant, the ACC tracks the choice difficulty. It cares about how close the options are. When the tug of war is tied, the ACC fires like crazy.
So the ACC is the guy sweating when you're looking at a menu for 20 minutes because everything looks good.
That is your dorsal anterior cingulate cortex firing on all cylinders. It signals that more cognitive resources are needed to break the tie. It's yelling, hey, we are stuck. Send more blood flow. We need to make a decision.
So if I'm agonizing over a decision, that's not my banker failing. That's my accountant panicking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there is a twist with the ACC. We used to think it guided the choice during the decision, like pick the bagel. But a 2021 study by Kai in Life threw a wrench in that.
This was the study with the monkeys, right?
Yes. They recorded individual neurons in the dorsal ACC of monkeys while they made choices about juice rewards.
I love monkey juice studies.
It's the bread and butter of neuroscience. They found, surprisingly, that these ACC neurons didn't seem to care about the offer while the decision was being made.
What?
They encoded variables after the decision.
Post-decision. So the accountant is doing an audit.
That's the perfect analogy. They encoded the chosen value and chosen cost. This suggests the ACC might be less about making the choice and more about monitoring the consequences.
Why would it do that? The choice is already made.
To update the model, the ACC is the quality control manager. It watches what you picked, how hard it was and what you got, and then files a report so the VMPFC can do a better job tomorrow.
So if I pick the donut and it tastes stale, the ACC says, note for the record, bad investment.
Exactly. It informs the subsequent motor action or future model.
This leads us perfectly into the mechanism of updating, because filing a report implies communication. How does the accountant tell the banker to change the strategy? This brings us to one of the coolest concepts in neuroscience: neural oscillations, brain waves.
Now we are moving from where to when and at what frequency. A 2024 study by Zhao in Nature Communications looked at this. They weren't just looking at neurons firing, they were looking at beta oscillations.
Okay, stop. Beta oscillations. We hear about alpha waves for sleep, beta for focus.
Right.
What are we actually talking about? Is the brain vibrating?
Think of it like a choir. A single neuron firing is one person shouting, but an oscillation is the whole choir singing in rhythm. Beta waves are a specific rhythm, about 12 to 30 beats per second, 12 to 30 hertz.
Okay, so the choir is singing at a fast tempo. What does that do?
Zhao found that this beta activity in the ACC is what locks in a reward bias.
Explain locks in.
So let's say you choose a salad instead of the donut, and you feel good about it. Hey, I'm healthy. Your brain needs to learn from this event, so you do it again. Zhao found that beta oscillations in the ACC predict this bias. Stronger beta waves mean the brain strongly learns, this was good, do it again.
It's like the save button.
Yes, or like the ink drying on the contract. If the beta waves are strong, the lesson sticks.
And this has a clinical connection, right? The notes mentioned depression.
A profound one. They looked at patients with depression and found that this beta activity in the ACC was reduced. This effectively explains anhedonia.
Anhedonia is the inability to feel pleasure, right?
That's the definition, but this suggests a mechanism. It might not be that they don't feel the pleasure in the moment. It might be that the ACC fails to lock it in.
Oh, wow. So you might eat the donut, taste the sugar, but the brain never hits save.
Exactly. The ACC doesn't generate those beta waves. So the brain doesn't update its value model. It doesn't learn that the donut was worth the effort. So the next time, you have no motivation to get it. You're stuck in a loop of not valuing anything because your accountant isn't recording the profits.
That is heartbreaking. It makes depression sound like a bureaucratic failure in the brain, but it's also incredibly hopeful because it gives us a target.
Right. If we can restore those beta waves, maybe through stimulation, maybe through specific therapies, we might be able to treat the motivational deficit in depression. We can fix the save button.
We're seeing this hierarchy emerge. The OFC-VMPFC does the math. The ACC monitors the outcome and updates the system via beta waves. But I have to ask about the striatum, the basal ganglia. I feel like every pop science article says dopamine, striatum, reward center. Is the striatum the boss?
That's the billion-dollar question. Is the subcortical brain driving the bus, or is the cortex? A 2023 paper by Gore in Nature asked exactly that.
Orbitofrontal cortex control of striatum leads economic decision-making. That sounds like a clear answer.
It is. They found that OFC activity leads the striatum.
Leads, as in happens first.
Yes. The cortical evaluation, the thinking, the comparing in the OFC drives the subcortical dopamine response. We often think of dopamine as this primal force that hijacks us. My dopamine made me do it. But this research suggests the evaluation happens upstairs first.
So the banker, the OFC, decides this is valuable and then calls down to the basement, the striatum, and says, release the dopamine.
Exactly. The cortex is the CEO, the striatum is the distribution center. The CEO drives the strategy.
That puts the banker firmly in charge, which means we aren't just slaves to our dopamine, we are slaves to our valuation of the dopamine.
That is a crucial distinction.
Okay, we've covered donuts, money, effort, and even the machinery of depression. But humans are social animals. We don't just maximize calories, we maximize friendship, altruism. Do we have a separate brain for being nice, or does the banker handle charity too?
This is the frontier, the social update, spanning research from 2020 to 2025. For a long time, we wondered if social value was special.
Because it feels special. Helping a friend feels different than eating a burger.
It feels different. But a 2023 review by Methamaris in Frontiers in Neuroscience argues for the extended common neural currency hypothesis. They suggest the VMPFC is crucial for social values trust, altruism, just as it is for food.
So to the VMPFC, a smile from a friend is just another form of currency. It's worth, say, 100 OFC bucks.
Yes. The brain treats helping a friend as a value input, just like eating a donut. It puts them on the same scale.
That's a bit cynical, isn't it? Friendship is just a commodity to the brain.
Or it's beautiful. It means we value connection as fundamentally as we value survival.
I like the beautiful interpretation better, but there's a catch.
There's a big catch. This is the 2025 update.
The Gragan paper, Brain Journal, this was the one with the lesion patients.
Yes. This study is crucial because it challenges the one big blob idea. Gregian and colleagues looked at patients with brain damage in very specific areas. They found a double dissociation.
Okay, explain double dissociation. That sounds like a magic trick.
It's the gold standard in neuroscience proof. It means area A does function X but not Y, and area B does function Y but not X. It proves they are distinct modules.
Got it. So what did they find?
They found that global damage to the VMPFC made people generally bad at learning rewards. But when they looked at specific subregions, they found something distinct. Damage to the subgenual anterior cingulate cortex, SGACC, and the anterior cingulate gyrus, ACCG, specifically disrupted the ability to learn to reward others.
Wait, hold on. So if I have damage to this specific spot, the SGACC, I can still learn to get rewards for myself.
Yes, you can learn press button, get money for me, perfectly fine, but you lose the ability to learn press button, get money for you.
That is incredibly specific.
It implies that while the currency might be common, the source of the funding is distinct. These regions, SGACC and ACCG, specifically track pro-social prediction errors. They track the surprise when your action helps someone else.
So we do have a dedicated circuit for altruism.
It appears so, or at least a dedicated circuit for tracking the value of others' well-being. If that circuit is cut, you don't become mean necessarily, you just become socially blind. You can't compute the value of helping.
That brings up the question of nice versus mean, because there was another paper, Lockwood, 2024, Nature Human Behavior, that talked about the tug-of-war within the VMPFC itself.
Yes, this is the medial versus lateral battle.
Medial meaning middle, lateral meaning side.
Right. They found that damage to the medial VMPFC led to antisocial behavior. These patients helped others less.
So the medial part is the good guy.
Seemingly. But here's the shocker. Damage to the lateral VMPFC, the side parts, actually increased prosocial behavior.
Increased. They became nicer after brain damage.
Relative to the other patients, yes. They devalued rewards for others less. They were more willing to help.
That is wild. Why?
It suggests the lateral VMPFC might be involved in self-interest. It's the part that says, hey, focus on my reward. When you knock it out, the selfish signal drops. The pro-social signal, which is driven by the medial part and the SGACC, is left unchecked.
So morality isn't just one thing, it's a balance. It's a tug-of-war between the medial part yelling, help others, and the lateral part yelling, help me.
Exactly. And the VMPFC integrates them. The conscience isn't the little voice, it's the result of this neural vector addition.
This is mind-blowing. We've gone from a donut to the nature of human goodness.
That's the power of the common currency. It explains everything from diet failures to moral heroism.
So let's synthesize this. We've covered a lot of ground. I want to walk through the journey of a decision one last time, putting all these pieces together. Let's go back to the kitchen. Donut versus vacation.
All right. Let's trace the signal. Step 1. Sensory input. The ventral temporal cortex sees the donut. It sends probabilistic evidence to the VMPFC. It is sweet. It is glazed.
Step 2. Valuation. The banker wakes up. The posterior VMPFC, the primitive part, screams yum. The anterior VMPFC, the abstract part, whispers savings. The scale starts to tip.
Step 3. Modulation. The DLTSC, the executive, chimes in with a slight lag, reminding you of the long-term goal. Remember the beach. It tries to add weight to the vacation side of the scale.
Step 4. The cost check. The insula and the DACC are monitoring. The accountant asks, is this choice difficult? Are we tied? The insula asks, is there a hidden cost? Am I disappointed?
Step 5, the social check. If there's a social element, say the donuts were for your kids, the SGACC and ACCG weigh in. If I eat this, will I be selfish? The medial VMPFC pushes for the social good. The lateral VMPFC pushes for self-interest.
Step 6, the choice. The net value crosses a threshold. The tug-of-war is won. The OSC signals the striatum, the basement. Release the dopamine. You pull your hand back, you chose a vacation.
And finally, step 7, the update. You skip the donut. The ACC generates beta oscillations, those 12 to 30 hertz waves. It stamps the file approved. It locks in the value of that self-control, updating your model so it's easier next time.
All of that in a split second.
In a split second.
So what does this all mean for us? Why should the listener care about their SGACC or their beta waves?
Because it demystifies the human experience. We tend to moralize our struggles. I ate the donut because I'm weak. I'm depressed because I'm broken. I'm selfish because I'm bad.
But looking at this, it's just mechanics.
It is mechanics. We struggle with diets not because we are rank, but because the posterior VMPFC, the concrete reward part, is evolutionarily older and faster than the anterior VMPFC, the abstract reward part. The gradient is stacked against us.
And we struggle with depression not just because we are sad, but because the ACC might be failing to broadcast the beta waves that tell us life is worth living. The save button is broken.
And we struggle with selfishness because the balance between our medial and lateral prefrontal cortex is constantly shifting based on stress, fatigue, and biology.
It makes values, financial, dietary, moral, feel less like abstract character traits and more like biological processes we can understand. And if we can understand them, maybe we can influence them.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. If you know the DLPFC lags, you know you need to buy yourself time. Wait 10 seconds before eating the donut. Give the logic board a chance to arrive at the meeting.
I love that. Give a logic board a chance to arrive. Here's my final provocative thought for you to chew on.
Go for it.
If all of our values, our deepest moral convictions, our love for our families, our financial discipline, are just firing rates in the VMPFC, subject to metabolic costs, blood sugar levels, and connectivity lags, do we truly have values? Or do we just have efficient calculation algorithms?
That is the ghost in the machine.
And if we could, as Zhao's 2024 paper hints, use technology to manually drive those ACC beta waves, could we artificially induce altruism? Could we cure greed? Or would that be the ultimate loss of humanity?
That is the ultimate question. If we can hack the currency, do we break the economy?
Something to think about next time you're staring at a donut. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Always a pleasure.